Very good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's uLaw webinar. The topic for today's uLaw webinar is uLaw Gmail integration. Now, unlike other webinars that we typically have during this time, we're going to be having a series. So basically this week and the week after, we're going to be talking about some very interesting integrations that we've built into the uLaw platform that we hope and believe is going to help reduce the amount of, I would say, docketing time, if you will, or just practice management efficiencies overall. It's an integration that our customers have been asking for some time now. And we've started with the integrating with Gmail. So essentially, this is a gateway for you as uLaw users to be able to docket email responses that you receive from your clients or even your other individuals that you deal with. Could be other parties, could be other representatives that you deal with on a daily basis, depending on the area of practice, right? Now we're able to take that email and at the least docket the amount of effort you want to allocate towards the correspondence of that email. Because as you know, time is money, and if you especially are dealing with a time and material matter, you want to make sure that you're able to capture almost every aspect and essence of that particular matter. So today's webinar is not accredited for any CPD credits. In fact, if you go into our website, info.uLawPractice.com/webinar, you would certainly see the ones that are marked as CPD. So in a couple of weeks, we do have our 1-hour CPD session. In fact, we do have multiple CPD sessions thereafter. But the next couple of weeks, we wanted to focus in time and efficiency integrations that we currently have invested heavily into the platform and hope you would benefit if you are a current uLaw user. If you are exploring for a practice management system, of course, this would hopefully give you an introduction to kind of who we are, the legal accounting practice management cloud-based software that we are based out of Ottawa in Canada. Okay, so the agenda for today, like every other uLaw webinar, has a specific agenda. This agenda is going to talk about the uLaw Gmail integration, its benefit, certainly having a live demonstration of how this feature works, and I don't even believe it's going to take the entire hour unless I really stretch this out. So hopefully I should be able to give you 15, 20 minutes back off your Friday afternoon. Okay, that's my promise. I'm going to jump straight into taking you into a uLaw platform, and this is what you would see. I've logged in as a fictitious legal practitioner, Roger Moore. And consider your day-to-day use of the uLaw platform. It's a practice management, legal accounting software. But one of the first things that you would do is essentially start to create contacts and be able to create files or matters, as they're called. And let's say I go into the civil litigation matter. In the past, of course, when you're looking to docket each and every aspect of work that you put into a matter, there were essentially, you would come into the matter, you would either click the matter event and say add new event, and I'll specifically focus on any email. And you would type in email created, and you can maybe put the subject line, let's say court visit, and anything else that you want to add further within that description, so it really helps make those invoices look better, right? More straightforward, elaborate, etc. And then you would have to look at the time spent, and then you come in and talk about the time that you've spent in creating that email. And then, of course, that when you save would take your per hour rate, right? So you're going to see that come into the billable time here. In a second. And there you go. So you have $90, so essentially 12 minutes, $400. Do the math, about $90 of effective billable time specifically for the email creation. Okay. The other way that we've seen growing and larger law firms deploy this capturing, if you will, of email is, of course, going into our Scratchpad. And as and when email correspondences start to come in, they would say the same thing. They would put in the name sometimes. Right? And you can add multiple rows. You'd say email composed. And this could be Jonathan. Okay, and again, I know I'm going around the bush here, but really to show you the amount of manual effort that you had to put in to enter this. And sometimes you need to come in, retype the billable time, come in here, add this as a new event, and then associate it to a specific matter. Okay. Of course, if you're doing 1 to 2 a day, this is really not a big deal. It's not a deal breaker, essentially. But we have clients, especially, let's say, in a criminal matter where each and every correspondence, each and every time and effort costs them money, and they really need to stay on top of their dockets, their matters, so they're really maximizing their revenue. That's when we have created this integration, starting with Gmail. And you know there are several other integrations that we at uLaw have with the whole G Suite. For example, we integrate with Google Drive, for example. Right? So fast and easy. You can connect with Google Drive and store all of your documents. Sorry, this webinar is not accredited for CPD. The title for today's webinar is uLaw Gmail Integration. And as I mentioned earlier, we do have our CPD session in a couple of weeks. So the next one also is about integration with LawPay, which is an interesting topic if you're wanting to maximize revenue and also be able to recover revenue faster. And yes, so the next couple of sessions are non-CPD sessions, but hopefully are of interest to you if you are a current user or are exploring the use of it. Okay, so we just looked at how you typically would manually enter dockets, especially around email correspondence, and getting yourself a little familiar with the whole integration with other third-party systems. And most of where we acknowledge, if you will, what the integrations look like would be under Matter, for example. Right at the top, you would have where would your Matter documents be sitting, right? So the next week, we're going to be talking about payment integration, and hence you would have under accounts all of the integration, and you could see we have LawPay as an added vendor in our overall integration, which is very new and very exciting for us. So this is where typically under settings, you're going to see the connection between uLaw and the third party. And this connection is secure, it's encrypted, and we ensure maximum security, especially when we're transferring information between the two systems. Okay. Very similar to these integrations, I want to introduce you to the new Gmail integration. So going back into the matter, we have two brand integrations when it comes to correspondence. We have an integration with a company called Corvum, as well as RingCentral, if you do use these voice over IP-based phone systems. So next time Corvum, the cool thing is that you have right on your fingertips on your phone. RingCentral, if you have email coming through, you can docket that as well. Pretty cool stuff, especially around phone. And you can actually record the phone conversation and add it to the docket. So we're going to be talking about in our upcoming webinars. But I'll draw your attention to what you see here under Matter, Settings Matter, the last option called Email Integration. So we're still building the Office 365. It's not available yet, but we're certainly integrated with G Suite. Now, these third-party systems, as you know, in this day and age of cloud and being out in the web, they require a stringent security protocol, and it all begins with a very strong password, which is then used as a key or as a shake hand or a golden handshake, however you like to call it, between systems. So from uLaw to this third-party system, in this case it's G Suite, especially around email, because you know how easy it is to get into these systems and you don't want them in the wrong hands. We hence have created a second password. So you have your default password that you would use to, of course, log in into the uLaw account, right? And typically for integrations for Google Drive and documents, we ask you for your Gmail integration or your Google email address and password. But for email, because it's so easy and you don't want this to be in the wrong hands, we go one step further and we ask you to create yourself a 16-character, I would call it a key more than a password, that you would use to integrate between uLaw and these third-party systems, starting with G Suite. Okay? So I've already created one, and it's in combination of lower, upper characters, numbers, and special characters if you can do that. That's the first step, really. And if you're a new user and you haven't explored the use of this feature, you would then see this empty. So you would go create your own unique key. And remember that key, because that's what's going to be used in the next step. Another prerequisite, when it comes to email, of course, uLaw is now trying to match the email that you received or the email that you're composing to, and match that with an existing contact and a matter for that contact, so that now you can associate that email correspondence and capture that moment and right away docket it into uLaw. Right? That's the whole essence. So a prerequisite is that you appreciate and understand that the email should exist within the uLaw system. So I've created a contact. Let's say this is a client, and now this email field becomes very critical. Typically, we see clients not necessarily filling this out initially, but we encourage you to ask for this email information if you want to use this integration feature. And now comes the next fun aspect of it. So I will go into this contacts matter, and you see there are currently a couple of matters, traffic ticket, and there's one for a will. Now, if you go into Google, the wonderful World Wide Web of Google, they have something called as a Chrome Web Store or Chrome Extension Store. Okay? If you have not already installed it, I highly encourage you, because uLaw is doing a lot of innovation using this Chrome extension. And you just have to search for uLaw, and you would notice there's a uLaw toolbox. Now, I have already installed it. If you haven't installed it, it's going to say remove. Okay. Now, once you do make that installation, what happens is under your Chrome, I know this is overwhelming, one step at a time, you've got your keys set up under settings. You're assuming, or we're making the assumption, that a customer or a client has an email that you can associate with. And then you're downloading the uLaw toolbox, as it's called, under your Chrome extensions. And I'm using a Chrome browser. That's another prerequisite for now. You would not see this feature if you're using a Firefox or Internet Explorer or any of those. This is specifically built for Chrome, which is a leading browser. And when you do install the Chrome extension of the uLaw toolbox, right on top here, or you can go in here and look at all your extensions, right? Or just click on this toolbox. You're going to see manage extensions and all the other extensions that I've created under. And if I click on uLaw toolbox, this is now a gateway between your very familiar web interface of the uLaw platform using Chrome to third-party applications. Okay. For one, it has a lot of tutorials and manuals, almost like a shortcut or a short key. So if you click on manual, it's going to take you right into the uLaw manual under our slide share. There's some very informative things here. that I'll introduce you to. You can go to our YouTube channel right from here, our Twitter channel, our handle, our website. If you want to learn more about this at your own pace, you can bootstrap your learning, so on and so forth. So I encourage you to visit, download the toolbox, and the top part, these 8 icons are all about the learning experience and the correspondence with the uLaw platform. Bottom right here, you could set up reminders for the CPDs that we have on our webinars. And of course, you could have past CPDs and access to our education system, but that's more for the institutions that we teach at. Okay? Now, in between these 2 icons, you see this new one that's launched called Ula Docket Launcher. Okay, so that's new. So let's say you have an email account, and I'm logged into the same email, and let's say your customer is emailing you, and let's say this is a new matter discussion, or let's say traffic ticket, 60 over 40, 50, need to discuss matter. So let's say a customer sends you this email, yeah? So you're working out of your home office and you receive this email. So let's say you've created the matter, it's an ongoing client, ongoing matter. You're going to receive that email in your inbox. I'll just give it a minute, and there you go, the magic of the internet. Now, you see these 2 red boxes, which are going to be new to you. That gets automatically triggered when you download the Chrome extension. Okay, so let's say you have this. Typically, it's a much longer email, and we've seen how time is spent in pursuing through that email, reviewing it, and reading it to begin with. So if you are going to docket that you have spent the time to read this pretty long email, you can just click uLaw email read. Step 1, go into the Chrome extension and associate that action. Click on the uLaw toolbox. Step 2, and the last step is click on the Docket Launcher. Now right away, so you're going to use your username and that secret key that you used within that 16-character secret key to first understand that the connection has been made. Use the email to which you want to associate it the first time, your customer's email, and automatically uLaw connects with this email from your Gmail account through the toolbox to the corresponding, your username is your uLaw username, the secret key is the secret key you created under Matter, it's not your password, and the customer's email is all we need now to associate this email to a client or another party that's stored within the uLaw system. So if I choose traffic ticket, one among the 2 matters that already exist, and I could change whatever I like. You could see this is email correspondence. Okay, I could take the description right out of the subject line, and you could docket the time and effort, 9 minutes. Just hit docket. Okay, that's all you have to do. You don't have to get into uLaw to manually docket that. And what I'm really hoping happens, because if it doesn't happen, then we pretty much lost the purpose of this webinar. Takes a few seconds. Thank you, God, for saving me there. You could see automatically whatever we entered into that uLaw toolbox gets automatically saved into your respective matter with all of the information that you want to capture at that particular time. Really, the essence here is time. As soon as you get that email, the ability for you to quickly tag it as a docket, Whether you want to charge them and you change your mind afterwards, that's totally different. But the ability for you to stay on top of those email correspondences and tag them really as billable items into your respective matters, that's the bottom line that we're working towards. Okay, so you've got your billable time. You can go here and expand on this if you need. This typical uLaw actions that you would take. Whatever you want, you can add this, you can beautify it. Continue to save it. So hopefully that was the wow or voila moment for you. It certainly was for me when I first saw it. So this is pretty new in your ability to be out of uLaw. You don't even need to have the uLaw system opened. All you need is your email with the email or the uLaw toolbox installed. Okay? The same thing happens if you're going to be responding to this email. Of course, pardon that these emails don't make sense at all. It's very rudimentary. You could certainly take the toolbox, docket this response, you can say it's a 6-minute docket, essentially send it to the client. So it's a two-way street. So we're reading the email and then, of course, responding back. So both actions, you can just simply use the toolbox to associate this particular customer with the email. And I'll tell you why, because when you go back into the contacts, this matters email corresponds to that. So this is very critical. It's a prerequisite that these emails match. If they don't match, of course, we'll give you a little error message that says the email doesn't match, or there could be, you may make a mistake of duplicating emails, and we'll give you alphabetically the first name that has that email associated. And if you find that that's not the right thing, you go back into uLaw and change the email. So that's pretty straightforward. But if there's an error, if that email does not exist, or if it's a wrong email, we'll automatically throw an error message that says, hey, this really doesn't match. Okay. Not only that, let's say you're composing a new email. You're not even responding. You see there's one button here. Okay, uLaw email compose. So let's say to that same client, you're writing a longer email. You want to say initial client intake form needs to be filled. Let's say you have some kind of an email that you've composed. You can, before sending it, you want to tag it. So you would click on step 1, uLaw email compose. Step 2, toolbox. So it's just almost telling your assistant saying, hey, docket this for whatever time. And let's say this took 24 minutes. You can see, you can associate it to traffic ticket response. We'll just change this to initial intake. Put the docket, and then send the email. In all of these, the idea is for you to capture the moment and the correspondence that you received within that Gmail account through the toolbox into your uLaw system. Okay. And you can see in my previous Rules Matter, I had quite a few of those dockets. And the one good thing we've seen, especially if this is a solo practitioner and you don't have much time to do all of this, the toolbox almost becomes your assistant, as I mentioned earlier, you being able to just tell that toolbox where these different correspondences go. And we're not going to stop with just the Gmail integration here. If you really notice, what we're trying to do is use the Chrome extension as a gateway between the third-party systems that you use, the web systems. So you're going to see, similar to Docket Launcher, you're going to see the integration with Corbum, the integration with third-party systems, and a lot more that's going to come through with the Outlook integration, etc. So if you haven't already downloaded the toolbox under your Chrome store, all you have to do is go into Chrome extensions and then search up uLaw, and there you have it. Okay? And once you have it, you're going to find it in your Chrome window here under extensions. And we're going to be specifically focusing on the Ula Docket Launcher. Okay? And that's pretty much all I had in my mind in terms of wanting to show you this new feature that we've built. If there are any other questions that you may have at this time, I'll be happy to take it. But as I mentioned earlier, I certainly wanted to save you some time because the specific focus of this webinar was to walk you through this new enhanced feature that we have. And as you add matters to it, it would start to reflect there as well. So if there's a new matter, and let's say this is family law, or let's say real estate. This is where it becomes extremely instrumental. If you're having a repeat customer and you have multiple matters, sometimes these emails can get very confusing, and you need to be right at that moment, in that presence of mind, to know which email correspondence and the time and effort goes to which matter, and hence these toolboxes become that much more important for you to connect with, right? And if you made a mistake and if you've got the wrong username, the wrong password, we'll be sending you little notifications to make the adjustments. There you go. You have those 3 different matters: the purchase of condo, wills, and traffic ticket. Okay, so if you wanted to associate this email or essentially talk about you can go ahead and do the docket. So as the uLaw actual file evolves, or as new matters get added, it automatically reflects the uLaw, refreshes it. Just takes a little bit of time, a couple of seconds extra, to refresh it in the toolbox as well. So now you can differentiate which particular matter you want to associate that email correspondence to. Okay? And yes, we're certainly bringing this into Office 365. So if you have a book or if you have Web 365, and most certainly this would be a very similar experience that you'll find. So in email, you would be in the Outlook world. Well, that's coming shortly. Any questions at all at this time? Okay, there's a question about how do we match the emails. I did mention this earlier, and I'll revisit that. Sorry if I didn't, if I was not too clear. The prerequisite is when you do create a client, typically you would create that client within uLaw. And here's one such client I've created. There is a section under that client intake form, email, and most specifically, a work email. So you could have multiple emails for a customer, but make sure that it's the work email that we're dealing with. Okay? Because that's the email that we're going to be using for association with your Gmail. And what happens is when you receive an email from this specific email account, in this case, you can see that there is this Praveen1421. You received it from that Gmail account. When you open up this email and then open the toolbox, when you click the Docket Launcher, in the scene, you can see that searching for Praveen1421, it's heading back the system based on this particular username and secret key and the email address that you provided. Okay, so for example, I think, so yeah, that's how pretty much we match it. The remaining title, description, and docket time, that's for you to repurpose. If you want to utilize what's in the email, or if you want to type your own, you can most certainly do that. Next evolution, now that we've done this, the next aspect of even Gmail integration is to bring the subject itself. But the issue with that is some emails can be pretty elaborate and extensive. So we hopefully will give that control to you if you want to bring the subject itself as a description into the matter. Because otherwise it becomes exceedingly long and leads to a little more confusion with the integration. So right now we just have the title, and the description is just the subject line of the email itself. Okay. And just as a recap, first prerequisite is to be able to go into settings, under matter, right at the end you have your email integration server with G Suite. Create yourself a 16-character secret key. This is different from your uLaw password. That key gets used across the uLaw toolbox. Download the toolbox from the Chrome extension, and it works only on Google Chrome, this particular feature. And then when you open up your emails, you would notice the toolbox right up here. You would also notice the two buttons you find under here and a third button under when you're composing an email. And then when you use the toolbox and you talk about the Docket Launcher, based on the email that we're dealing with, it would automatically pick it up and give you, so you got to wait for the matter to load. That's really your sign that something is happening in the background. And once it loads, then you can associate that to the matter. Okay. So that's pretty much all I had for today's session. As I mentioned, hopefully I've saved you the 20 minutes. But we do have a very similar integration-specific webinar for next week as well, where we talk about integrating very similarly payments, new feature with LawPay. So if you're a current law firm or legal firm that uses LawPay, then we have a very straightforward integration where you can get both trust-related funds as well as general-related funds right into your respective accounts, financial systems that are connected with LawPay. Okay, so we look forward to seeing you in the webinar. Our CPD session would follow suit soon after that, on the 10th of September, which talks about the law office management, a very important one discussion around the specifics of how you intake client, and we'll talk about the new feature around how you could send out web links or automated client intake right from your customers, where you don't have to enter it at all. Okay? Where we actually mandate, interestingly enough, the capture of the email, because we need the email to begin that correspondence. So it almost becomes a great segue for your Gmail integration. I'll pause for any more questions, maybe another couple of minutes if you have any specific to today's topic, and we'll go from there. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for participating.